All right, I'm here with Ava Skipworth and James Green. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
We were having a great conversation. I just want to get this on there. So please, if you wanted to continue on, we were talking about getting on the path of success.
I think you want me to start back and repeat what I said before.
Yes, please. In any format, if you want to paraphrase it, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, the only thing I was talking about was Ava's particular situation where she was general manager and part owner of Saturn and Mesquite, and when a unusual thing happened, like they don't make Saturns anymore, then she used that as an opportunity to open up her first Monster Yogurt in Dallas, Texas, at the Casa Linda Plaza. And probably if she'd have been able to keep that job, she never would have catapulted herself into doing something like that. And so my speculation is that sometimes a failure in life is the very thing that catapults you on into something that you really enjoy doing and making a success out of it. And the most important thing is, most likely is, you're doing something important because you're providing employment for other people. You know, you can go to college, and a lot of people ask you the question, are you going to college so you can get you a good job? Or are you going to go to college so you can get other people a good job? And so an entrepreneur has the opportunity to actually able to get other people a good job, and they work for you. So that's the main thing.
Yeah, it's a different dynamic. I see what you're saying exactly, because I think I don't want to say the easier route, but maybe the more mainstream route is to sort of, be employed by somebody, have a specialized role, clock in, clock out. But you were talking about this earlier, and I think it's absolutely true. That sort of path works, except that you could easily tether yourself to that lifestyle if you start, accruing obligations and, essentially.
You can't get out of it once you get into it.
Right, because it's sort of like you've built up this.
You got bills to pay, you got obligations, and so forth and so on. You got note payments on the house, and so forth and so on. So you really can't just start something. You're not tempted to start something because life's good. But if something happens to you that's bad, then bad can become good if you let it. It's attitude.
I believe it. No, I believe it, because you're right. Every sort of failure, there's something to be said about not meeting your own expectations. It just lingers in your mind. It forces you to think creatively, so you never experience, whatever it is that, led to the failure.
I tell you what, you know how I could find on the street a totally blind person. I could give him my eyes, and I promise you, the first time he stepped off of a curb, because he doesn't know. Now, when your baby is first born, he's going to trip and fall. But he learns, hey, if I do this, I trip and fall. So you've got to have those failures in order to learn. That's the most important lesson you can have.
And speaking of, I really like that example of the blind person, because I think that blindness can be used metaphorically too. I think sometimes there's a lot of fuzz, right? You see, for example, a business owner. You go, okay, wow, they became a business owner. Well, there are the humble beginnings, which I remember we talked about this morning. There's the end result, which is becoming a business owner, but then there's that whole gray area in between. How did you try and sort of demystify that in your experience? Because obviously you were used to being, in a job that was high output, high wage, and consistent up until, the demise of Saturn.
Right. Well, number one, downsized and just put everything I had into, and I mean emotionally, physically, work ethic, took all of those things that I had built over in a job and learned from that experience and just put it into my own brand. When I first started, I was actually going to get a franchise, and I was like, I just take it easy and get a franchise and have this system in place. And I started looking at them, and I felt like I would get a little bored. And so I wanted to be able to control and look at all the different aspects and just have fun with it and create a brand that I could create all the different aspects.
So you're gonna be in
goes
control of
into it.
everything.
Yeah,
Exactly.
just or have fun with it. If I wanted to do it more for the money, I probably would have stayed in the automobile field. But I really wanted to do it to bring something cool to my neighborhood, give back to the community. I wanted to service young families. My son was 4 years old at the time, and there didn't seem to be places to take kids and not have to spend a whole lot of money. And so I wanted to fill that need that I felt like there was in the community.
I love that because when you fill slots, then things don't really change because and to fill slots, I mean, if you jump into a job at a company, you're employed by somebody else. Well, you're supporting whatever organization it is that you're in, but nothing new is being created. And so the path that you've taken now has made this whole unique experience for folks to come through and, in your particular case, is to get yogurt that's healthy.
Yes.
I mean, it's not...
It's a healthier option. It gives people a place to go. I say it's a place to go with kids in tow without spending a lot of dough. Because our other locations, we're at the...
Memorable.
We're at Urban 8, and this is inside of a food court. But my other locations actually have little indoor playgrounds so that the kids can go run while the parents have a date night or a meeting or drink some free coffee or use the Wi-Fi, that sort of thing.
So there's flexibility even for students and...
Yes.
Right.
It's just more of a community place, and that's what I wanted to provide. I didn't really necessarily do it for the money. I downsized everything and said I just want a simple job, rinse and repeat every day, up the street from my house, that sort of thing.
I mean, I'm sure one of the awesome parts about that job is doing quality control, right?
Yeah, so definitely I do quality, a lot of quality control, and I like to serve families and young people in all different ways. So we do employ a lot of the local teenagers. We give first job experience, and that is part of our whole goal and concept of what I want to be able to contribute. So even if I'm mentoring somebody to go off and be an entrepreneur in college, or I'm having to terminate somebody because they set on my freezer and they're not, been warned
Right.
about a rule. I mean, that's still a life lesson for them.
Absolutely.
And it still gives them that first job experience. And that's kind
Both
of how
ways.
I wanted to contribute.
Almost give them their first failure so they can catapult themselves to success.
I guess so, yeah.
It's
That
true.
happens every once in a
Yeah,
while. I hate
yeah,
for that to
yeah.
happen.
I'm sure it's got to be hard. But sometimes that is what it takes.
Yes, sometimes, it
Well,
does.
You got to be woken up from time to time in life, and to go forward sometimes.
And we talked about it on the way here. I mean, that was certainly my life experience when my family was hit with, essentially financial duress. I mean, I was forced to get crafty. I was forced to have to work hard when I wasn't before. I was sort of living this luxurious life and not progressing. Sort of stuck in my ways, being very inefficient. So, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, we need that sort of a struggle. And I think it might even be healthy to make your own struggle, or maybe even when you're mentoring somebody, to impose something to make them a little uncomfortable, make them work a little bit harder. Kind of like how you were telling about your father, how you had this plan to buy this, I think it was a mini bike, right? A mini scooter?
Just an all-state motor scooter.
So, and you had committed to it, and rather than canceling it due to lack of funds, your father said, you know what? See if you can get yourself a good job and fund this thing. And bam, like you said, I mean, that was the start for you, right?
Never needed money since. Always had more than I needed.
Wow.
But my big secret was I didn't want a lot.
So many temptations out there, yes.
Yeah.
You see the latest crop of cars or gaming systems or vacations.
I heard someone say the other day on the TV that if you could work with a person's DNA to such an extent to get rid of that, I need the gratification now, and learn how to redo your DNA so that you can defer your gratifications, then you're on the road to success.
I mean, it makes sense because we all want the cool stuff now, but sometimes, going back to obligations, they become just that, and they become anchors.
My dad always tried to teach me that. I'll say we had a big shop, a retail shop in downtown Denison. And so as a child, my brother and I were running up and down the streets all the time and going to the different shops. And there was a soda shop right across the street, and they had fancy sodas that you could put things in and this and that. And they were $1 over there. But up the street, 2 blocks away, in the garage of Babcock Brothers, which was my grandparents' store, there was a soda machine where you could buy a soda for a nickel. So whenever we wanted a soda, we would never get $1 to go to the fancy soda shop. We had to run 2 blocks up and go through the store and into the garage and to pay a nickel for the soda.
Probably worth it.
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing, you don't have to pay income tax on the money you save. You have to pay income tax on the money that you earn. There's a big difference there.
I did once see a meme. It was recently after Black Friday. It said, "Oh, you can save 100% this season if you buy nothing." And I went, "Hey,
Oh,
okay,
I love that.
that makes a lot of sense." And so I did.
Yeah, if you want to save some money, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, just stay away from all of them.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was pretty smart.
Get your Christmas tree in January. They're free.
Literally, yeah. And yeah, I guess timing things, yeah, that's a whole other subject, right? I mean, you could time your purchases of winter wear or of a car and save substantially. I mean, I know that's how certainly I've bought all my cars is model year end.
Or maybe 2 years back, I was talking to a guy the other day, and I really admired his Cadillac. And it was actually a 2014 Cadillac. But the 2017 Cadillacs was getting ready to come out. And so he had a beautiful, I guess what they call those, they don't look like they're not like a Cadillac car, but they got a hatchback on it, whatever they call it.
Crossover, yeah.
Crossover type car. Anyways, a beautiful little Cadillac. But it was almost 2 years old when he bought a brand new Cadillac. And so he was able to, he was in a good position to negotiate.
It's a smart move because you're still getting the Cadillac and no one knows.
3-year warranty.
Right.
Still getting it all. Yeah.
It still looks, feels, drives like a Cadillac. It's still the same thing.
Yeah.
But on that back end, save a lot of money.
Yeah. And it looks like anybody can forge the papers just a little bit to make it say 2017, doesn't it?
No.
Honestly, mentally, it's going to register as 2017.
Yeah.
And so you still win.
Yeah, you win regardless.
You're still up to date.
Uh-huh.
On the outside, you're driving a 2017 as far as anyone's concerned, which is smart.
So you live in Denison, Sherman area?
Yes. I live in Sherman. I moved out there in late September. I've been looking at many different places to live last year.
He actually lives in a place called Post Oak.
So,
Well, when you're ready for a new home or a condo, come see my dad.
yes, a condo, yes.
Or a townhome. He built the first townhomes in Denison, Texas.
What I have
Did he
looked
tell
at,
you that?
I actually did not. No, I didn't know about this.
Village Green Townhome Edition. It's been the first townhome edition in Denison, Texas, and to date, the only townhome edition in Denison, Texas.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he
Okay.
built that in the 80s, right? Was it the 80s?
Started it in '83.
And every time I get down and it's wintertime, because I have a seasonal business here, and I get down and woe is me. My dad's like, "Oh, I almost lost everything in the 80s when I built those townhomes, and then it all turned around. You're going to be okay."
So that was a big risk then you took,
Yeah.
building those.
Oh yeah. And I'll tell you the main ingredient that I had that so many people do not have, and the ingredient that anybody has when they're going to have to go into business for themselves, just remember the word tenacity.
Okay.
Yeah. You've got to have the ability to stick with your dream, And it's almost like those people I was talking about earlier, that Dude Perfect.
Yes. Please tell this story.
I was so surprised when I first heard the word Dude Perfect, because I didn't have not a clue what it was, but it was it's something that you see on YouTube, crazy like all you have to do is just type in Dude Perfect and it's there. And I was so surprised. A lady that I actually did some remodeling for in her house, her and her husband, Ralph and Janelle Jones. I don't imagine they mind me saying that. But anyway, their son went to college, and a bunch of college friends was out playing, in their backyard one time with basketball, and all of a sudden one of those guys made an almost impossible shot with that basketball. And one of them hollered back, one of the other friends hollered back and said, "Dude, perfect." And so that's when they kind of came up with the idea to just start doing YouTubes and showing it on YouTube. And then, it's amazing to me, but Grandma Jones tried to talk him out of it. Said, "Steve, this is something you don't need to do. You need to go out and get a real job. You're not going to make a living doing this." Anyway, he had the desire, and he also had the tenacity to stay with it. And all of a sudden, they started making more money filming and putting it on YouTube than they could have ever made getting that job. And so I was really quite surprised to hear that. A lot of people in Denison knew about it, but I didn't know about it.
Yeah, I'd never heard that story before myself.
So I told the story time and time again because I was just fascinated by the fact that some young person, or in this case, several of them, just their buddies. Matter of fact, one of them decided to stay into medical school. And so after spending another 4 or 5 years in school, he'll never earned it with his medical degree what these guys are making, just going out and having a wonderful fun time. But it was, I forgot how many there were. There was 6 or 7 all total. Let's just say, just for the talk here, there's probably 7 of them. And he dropped out to continue in his field of being medicine. And the rest of them decided they was going to do it. And it's unbelievable. And it was last summer they were actually invited to the PGA golf tournament in Hawaii, and so they got paid to go over there and do some Dude Perfect stuff.
Oh, I believe it.
And that all came from Denison, Texas. See,
that's something I never would have known, because when I lived in DFW, I remember passing by their office in Frisco and thinking, wow, these guys are local. This is wild. But yeah, I never would have known.
Well, I'm sure that some of the boys might have been from different places.
Makes sense.
But the only, the one that I know, the one that I knew as a young kid,
that's where it started.
Was from Denison, Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it started.
And his grandma tried to talk him out of it. You can't make a living doing that.
And I could see why, because
yeah,
it goes back to that gray area we were talking about. Because
go out and get a job, buddy. Go out and get a job.
Because at least it's more concrete. You say, okay, you get a job, well, you know what to expect. You're going to get whatever benefits, whatever pay, whatever hours. Whereas when you say, oh, I'm going to do something entrepreneurial, goodness, there's a lot of inertia and a lot of, just fog when it comes to trying to, make something like that happen.
A lot of feeling like you're running like a gerbil most of the time.
Oh, no doubt about it.
And then eventually, it comes about.
The only way I could run like a gerbil if I had a real good cane that could keep up with me.
He's better than I am.
Well, you're at the stage where you have nothing to prove, so I look forward to the day.
Yeah.
But there was
But I still have a lot to achieve.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. In other words, I'm 74 years of age, and I adopted learning as a lifetime thing, and so that's what I love to do. Now, I hated school because I didn't want to learn what my teachers wanted me to learn, but I found out that when I got into my real life and I could learn what I wanted to learn, I loved doing it. And so I got my first little computer in front of me, and I learned how to do some programming in a 4th generation language, and I wrote my first accounting program. And I never had an accounting class in my life, but I learned to do it because I had a bookkeeper that said, we'll run a parallel system. I'll keep the books as they are by hand. You write your program and we'll run it and see what they look like. After about 3 months, we run it, and she said, well, you've got it made. And you know what that did for me? It saved me $150 a month. Now, I promise you, that $150 a month is $1,800 a year. That bought and paid for, that one thing bought and paid for every computer that I've ever owned, because I didn't have to pay that $150 a month anymore.
No, that's huge.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. And so sometimes it's the simplest stuff that makes it happen to you. I've always told my daughter that it's you watch the pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves.
And also going back to that emotional aspect you were talking about earlier, I once heard this, and I'm sure this might resonate with you, because it definitely resonated with me. There was a famous YouTuber that once said, when he had first started, back when not many people were watching his videos, they'd make all, these sort of comedic skits, and after he was done, his gut would tell him, I should stop doing this. This isn't going anywhere, right? It's a waste of time. And he said, what he learned over time is whenever he'd get that gut feeling, to keep going even more.
Right. Yes, exactly. It's the plugging away that will win you the day.
Well, the rabbit. They see what the turtle and the tortoise and the hare.
Right.
The tortoise won.
See, it makes sense, right? Because I'm sure you can get a rocket start on things, but maybe you get overwhelmed, right? Is that what it is? You just let's say you start something and you invest a ton of money into it, and now perhaps you don't have the means to utilize all of what you've invested.
If everything you do is just, if everything you do, you rush into it and you don't give a chance to settle down into what you're doing so you can make adjustments as you go. And if you just barrel ahead into something that might be in the wrong direction, I know when I started my building business, I really never did try to overbuild and build too much. I took it slow so that I could pretty well exist, as opposed to taking a bunch of risk and then have a downturn in the mid market and then and get caught. I've seen too many builders do that. Well, the bankers are the biggest trickster of them all, because what happens to a young builder? He'll go in there and he'll start one house and he'll sell just like that. Then he'll start another house and he'll sell just like that. And finally the banker says, you know what you ought to do? You ought to start doing 2 at a time. And I actually saw about in 2008, when everything kind of collapsed with the economy, this guy had 3 of them, and all 3 of them, everything quit selling. He lost his whole batch with one fell swoop, because the banks were too anxious to loan him money. And if he would have just had more patience, he wouldn't have had that problem.
Basically just going one at a time.
One at a time.
Yeah,
Until you start using your own money. Now, once you start using your own money, you're not going to get hurt that bad. But when the banks are nipping away at you at 7 or 8%, because you're building a spec house, you just can't imagine how much that adds to the cost of keeping your business open. Bunches. Yeah. Matter of fact, when I built those townhomes in Denison, Texas, that was right in the middle of the financial collapse that we had in the 80s.
No kidding.
And that's when they had what they call the Resolution Trust. The federal government formed Resolution Trust to take all these banks that started failing, and they're going to manage it themselves. One guy, they had told this Denison Federal Savings and Loan folks, they had told them, well, you've got to pay high interest rates, because interest rates got real high in the 80s because they was trying to calm down inflation. And I mean, you go buy a CD for 10 years and get 10% interest. The Federal Savings and Loans had loans out. They were bringing them in at 8%, but for them to come up with the money to do it, they had to pay 15% to get the money that was already loaned out at 6%. Well, this guy that worked at Federal Savings and Loan, when I first started those townhomes over there, he said, James, won't you let me loan you enough money that we can do all of these townhomes at one time and get it finished up in a hurry? And what they actually wanted to do, they kind of wanted to become partners with builders. And so they would share basically into the profits, because the federal government told them that they need to do something to offset that imbalance of what money they had all loaned out. It's like the Wonderful Life. They got the money's not at the bank. They got it all loaned out to people that's paying mortgage notes. And so, anyway, I was afraid to do that, so I made it.
Right, because I think there is always that desire to do more, and sometimes it could be a bit self-sabotaging in that sense. More, and like you said, you could pitch all your eggs in one basket, and next thing you know, you end up with, an omelet on the ground. So it's just, it's it's the truth. I mean, it's
But I like omelets.
Oh,
that's one way. Yeah, that's one way of looking at
and you
it.
get to learn another lesson. That's
Yes,
That's right.
another lesson.
Maybe the omelet. Yeah.
No, and it's time has really flown by. I think that the biggest moral of all this is that you got to be patient and work hard. So I wanted to thank you all for being on,
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it.
and thank y'all for listening.